Also, spending 15 minutes to determine a single fact in order to decipher a tweet or a piece of news coming from a source you've never seen before will often leave you more confused than you were before. Unless, of course, you spend 5 minutes like we did on Wikipedia to debunk Wikipedia to know that Wikipedia is not a source for debunking material. It's pretty conclusive, generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
When things are wrong, I'll be by your side. Even when you want to cry.
Hello there.
Hello. And welcome.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the Naked Apple.
So we did a bunch of stories in the first half of this. Isn't really half. It is, but it's not.
I really hope this isn't half.
It should go quicker than the last one because I don't plan on talking for a long time because my mouth can only take so much. Anyway, a story that we didn't cover in the last one but fits oh so well with this one is a... by the way, if you're listening to this and you didn't listen to the previous one, go listen to the previous one because it has nothing to do with this one, but it helps us.
He's not wrong.
Not wrong. But yeah, it went longer than we wanted, as usual. So we're doing this one that's separate. It's a bunch of research I did. I did some digging, some researching. But according to the New York Times, not supposed to do that. Not supposed to go down the rabbit hole. Now, usually what happens with these, this is an opinion piece, what happens on these articles and stuff is they usually put like, they have their headline and then they have like the thing you should take away from it when you don't have enough time to read it. Right? Usually. So the headline, don't go down the rabbit hole. Critical thinking, as we're taught to do it, isn't helping in the fight against misinformation.
You should read that as logic disproves everything I tell you.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
Because I only believe in science.
Yes. Yes. Last week we teased about follow the science because that's what progressives do, apparently. Except I'm about to lay down a bunch of research that might show that they don't really follow the science. And in one case, it shows that the CDC just kind of got rid of something entirely.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Yes. Because this also includes a not-so-humble brag, again, for our coverage of stuff. For an academic, Michael Caulfield has an odd request. Stop overthinking what you see online. Just take it at face value. And, you know, for the most part with progressivism, you can take it at face value because while they lie all the time, they also tell you exactly what they're going to do. He said, Mr. Caulfield, a digital literacy expert at Washington State University, Vancouver, knows all too well that at this very moment, more people are fighting for the opportunity to lie to you than at perhaps any other point in human history.
Well, I mean, that sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah. He should have put a link to the Time magazine article here. That would have been a great...
Or to almost any other news organization, just pick an article.
I'm more thinking the Time article of
the Times article lays it out pretty bluntly that there's a cabal that is doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Deliberately lied to the people to make sure the information it wanted was spread and not other information. Misinformation rides the greased algorithmic rails of powerful social media platforms and travels at velocities and in volumes that make it nearly impossible to stop. Unless, of course, you're Twitter and you just stop a story from a certain president's son.
Or your Facebook and you ban an entire continent.
That alone makes information warfare an unfair fight for the average internet user. Yes.
Yes, very. And even the non-average internet user like Australia.
Or the leader of the free world. But Mr. Caulfield argues that the deck is stacked even further against us. That the way we're taught from a young age to evaluate and think critically about information is fundamentally flawed and out of step with the chaos of the current internet.
Really? Wow.
We're taught that in order to protect ourselves from bad information, we need to deeply engage with the stuff that washes up in front of us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He suggested that the dominant mode of media literacy, if kids get taught any at all, is that you'll get imperfect information and then use reasoning to fix that somehow. But in reality, that strategy can completely backfire.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that the way that we've been taught to think critically is to look at the information somebody gives us and then look at other information that's out there to verify the information that was given to us and use logic and reasoning to determine what's accurate based on all of the things combined and looked at reasonably. And you're saying that that is a problem.
Yeah.
Is that what I gather from what he just said?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
I'll summarize your summary of his summary.
Oh. Let me explain. Wait. That'll take too long.
Yeah.
Let me summarize.
This might sound a little bit familiar. What we've been taught is fix reason firmly in her seat and call to her tribunal every fact, every opinion. Question with boldness even the existence of a God, even the existence of correct data, even the existence of an honest doctor. Because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Huh. And so he's telling us here that we're taught to do that. You'll get imperfect information, then use reasoning to fix that somehow. Yes, you bring before you everything about the subject and question it.
Yes.
But before doing that, you must fix reason firmly in her seat so that your emotions cannot take control.
That's a step that a lot of people skip.
Yeah, as we covered in the last episode of a school that
honestly, that's probably the hardest step.
It is, because by doing so, you are eliminating or at least limiting your bias. When you get rid of emotion, you are restricting your bias because you are looking strictly at the facts, the data, all this stuff, to allow you to come to an impartial conclusion. And then from there, you decide how that lines up with your morals, emotions, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so apparently, though, we're not supposed to do that anymore. And maybe, just maybe, this strategy can backfire because kids aren't taught this at all. And instead, they're taught to march around the school shouting black communism and whatever. Our last episode, if you didn't listen to that. In other words, resist the lure of rabbit holes, in part by reimagining media literacy for their internet hellscape we occupy. Let's see, somewhere in here. Our current information crisis, Mr. Caulfield argues, is an attention crisis. I mean, yeah, everyone's looking for their 5 seconds of fame on TikTok or whatever. Even the nurses that were so busy helping everyone. Yeah. The goal of disinformation is to capture attention, and critical thinking is deep attention. People learn to think critically by focusing on something and contemplating it deeply, to follow the information's logic and the inconsistencies.
Not exactly accurate. To think critically isn't to just focus on something and contemplate it deeply, because then you're just staring at the one thing.
Yes.
To critically think is to find the one thing and then find other things that either verify or negate the one thing. And to weigh those things in their accuracy in like manner to determine what is factual and what is false.
Actual critical thinking is connecting the dots.
Yes.
His description of critical thinking is staring at that dot that has a 13 above it and wondering why it has a 13 above it for hours.
To determine the depth and veracity of the 13. Because it's obviously the number, not the dot, that matters.
Or is it?
Or is it? I'm thinking critically.
Critically. This is the problem with most philosophy. Is it gets focused on that.
In that, right, he is actually correct. Because the rabbit hole of staring at a dot and wondering why it exists is indeed a rabbit hole you shouldn't follow.
Avoid that
Often
rabbit hole.
the dot exists simply because it exists.
Therefore it is.
Therefore it is. It is not the dot that you need to contemplate. It's the dot's meaning in the rest of the picture.
This has been your philosophical moment with the naked apple. If only we had some like classical music to play with that.
Some classical something or other. I don't know. Do I have anything classical? Let's see. I've got. This is a classic. Whoops. Wrong one.
Classic.
Here we go. This is your naked apple philosophy. No, that's no good.
No.
How about this one?
I like it.
I like it, but that's for something else.
That's for something else. that we wish we could do more because it's more fun.
We'll find another one that we can use for philosophical moments.
That natural human mindset is a liability and attention economy. It allows grifters, conspiracy theorists, trolls, and savvy attention hijackers to take advantage of us and steal our focus.
You mean like all of those people that have been pushing the Russia hoax for the last 4.5 years? No? Because that was propagated to draw attention away from some emails on a server. Oh, is that not what he's talking about?
Don't dig into that rabbit hole because then you'll
mean
find
something
that
else?
the exact opposite of what was said is actually true. Don't dig into that kind of rabbit hole.
I've been telling you for months that everything you believe is a lie. Here's an article that tells you that everything that you believe for months is actually exactly what we did, and we were lying to you.
Time magazine. Whenever you give your attention to a bad actor, you allow them to steal your attention from better treatments of an issue and give them the opportunity to warp your perspective.
That's right, because...
What do you think? That's what they do. They can make up anything.
Look at this guy. I almost thought he was wearing a glove for a second there.
I did too, honestly. Either that or he was auditioning for Blue Man Group and just didn't manage to wash everything off in time for his photo shoot.
Just missed it.
Just missed it.
He didn't make the cut. One way to combat this dynamic is to change how we teach media literacy. Internet users need to learn that our attention is a scarce commodity that is to be spent wisely, which is why everyone is headline news readers. They don't actually read the story, because if you did, you realize that the officer that was killed in the riots wasn't actually killed in the riots in January 6th.
Oh, no, it is. He died from a stroke.
At home from causes not related to the riots. But,
Yes.
I mean, that wasn't in the headlines, so you don't know about that.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
Yep. You can find that buried at the bottom of the article that talks about it with, was it CNN?
Times.
New York Times.
New York Times.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look, the New York Times. Oops. That's what we're reading.
I think it was, is either the Times or WAPO. It might have been both.
Yes.
Who knows?
In 2016, Mr. Caulfield met Mr. Weinberg, who suggested modeling the process after the way professional fact checkers assess information. This will be good. Mr. Caulfield refined the practice into 4 simple steps. So here's what the fact checkers do on Facebook and YouTube that incorrectly fact checked us, and now our stuff is back up because they can't deny it because Time Magazine helped us fact check them. Yes.
Because one of their own sources told them that we were right.
Oof.
Yeah, it sucks when your own people kick you in the nuts, isn't it?
You guys are wrong. Hey, they're right. What? So the steps are: 1, stop. 2, investigate the source. 3, find better coverage. 4, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context.
I mean, that's not entirely bad.
It's not bad. It'd be nice if the fact checkers actually followed this.
That would be real
Because
Rather
with-
than this is wrong because the Times News has an article that says this is wrong.
Because, like with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, for example, if they investigate the source, they'd find that none of their sources are their own people that they like to use. They have to use people like Elijah Schaefer and
Who were actually there.
who were actually there. Find better coverage. They'll find that if they look at all of the video evidence of the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, that he absolutely was defending himself and somebody else shot first, causing him to be on alert with the firearm.
Unless, of course, they find better coverage by looking for the videos that have been edited so that it only shows portions of it.
Right.
So that you take it out of context and believe the story that they're spinning.
Well, if you want to go with impeachment prosecution rules, yes.
Right.
Trace,
That was where I was going with that.
trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context. Now, see, one thing that's fun with New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, CNNBC, and all these other ABC alphabet people is a lot of the times you can click on a link and it takes it to one of the others, and you click on that link, it takes you to one of the others. You click on that link, it takes you to one of the others. And eventually, traveling through this web of them citing themselves, you get to sources like Elijah Schaefer and others that
That's when you get to sources that are actually
Covering.
things. Most of the time, you end up with a source that is somebody close to the situation, or somebody with knowledge of the situation, or somebody that was informed about the situation.
yeah.
Those are my favorite sources that Times and WAPO and all of these other CNN places use constantly.
An anonymous source.
An anonymous source close to the situation. That's my favorite part, is they always add that. Close to the situation.
We can't tell you who it is, but
Or
just know
with knowledge
that
of
it's
the
close.
situation.
Yeah, like when they like when they got caught with false information that the White House intentionally sent out to see who was leaking the information, and news organizations covered that information citing an anonymous source, and then the White House fires a person, and the news organizations get upset because all of a sudden their anonymous source is not in the White House anymore. Oops.
Well, damn it, Jim.
I'm a doctor, not a critical thinker.
I'm a doctor, not a journalist informant.
Mr. Caulfield walked me through the process using an Instagram
Which is
post
the opposite of what Fauci would say.
from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a prominent anti-vaccine activist, falsely alleging a link between the human papillomavirus vaccine and cancer. If this is not a claim where I have a depth of understanding, then I want to stop for a second and, before going further, just investigate the source, Mr. Caulfield said. He copied Mr. Kennedy's name in the Instagram post and popped it into Google. That's always a good way to go.
It's the best way to go because Google never lies to you.
Look how fast this is, he told me as he counted the seconds out loud. In 15 seconds, he navigated to Wikipedia. This sounds like what we just did to discount black communism in the last episode. Took us all of 5 minutes to read through everything to let you know it's racist. Critical race theory. He navigated Wikipedia and scrolled through the introductory section of the page, highlighting with his cursor the last sentence, which reads that Mr. Kennedy is an anti-vaccine activist and conspiracy theorist.
They really use Wikipedia as a source to disprove an art. That is
Yeah.
I mean, okay,
I can do that too. See, watch. Let's see. Let's
I will use Wikipedia for, some bits of information,
It's a
but
launching
never
pad.
as an actual source to either debunk or prove anything because Wikipedia is a shit show on a web page.
Yeah.
Like, see, if Wikipedia is your source for disproving something, then you're a moron.
For example, let's say I wanted to learn something about David Barton.
Ooh. From Wall Builders?
From Wall Builders. He is arguably the greatest historian we have currently on the founding of America.
Oh, look, he has a Wikipedia.
He has a Wikipedia page. Let's go take a look-see at what it says. An evangelical Christian political activist and author. He's the founder of Wall Builders LLC, Texas-based organization that promotes unorthodox theories about the religious basis for the United States.
So it doesn't mention the fact that he is an accredited historian.
No. Because, only the Department of Education used him as a source for history in their textbooks. And Texas, where he lives, uses him as a source for history in their textbooks because he's a historian. Scholars of history and law have described his research as highly flawed, pseudo-scholarship, and spreading outright falsehoods. His work is devoted to advocating the idea that the United States was founded as an explicitly Christian nation. No, he does not. And rejecting the consensus view that the United States Constitution calls for separation of church and state. Because it doesn't call for that. You can actually pull up the United States Constitution right here
And find out that in nowhere in the Constitution does it actually say anything about a separation of church and state.
You can even do it this way. Control F. Church and state.
There's
interpretation.
interpretation.
Oh, but it's not in
the actual thing.
Text.
You should highlight that though. Scroll your thing over there because in the interpretation it says paraphrased from Thomas Jefferson and used by others in expressing an understanding of the intent and function of the Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause of the Free Amendment to the United States Constitution, which reads,
Congress shall make no law establishing the whatever religion. I don't have it memorized verbatim. I'm sorry.
you could probably click on it and it would have showed you.
Nah. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Ta-da.
So it's an interpretation, not actually anything that was said.
And then it shows...
And then it paraphrases a misquote from
And then it
Thomas Jefferson.
then it takes excerpts from letters, not documents, not actual like law documents or
and this is how
anything like
Wikipedia
that.
works.
Yeah. We just use Wikipedia to debunk Wikipedia. So, congratulations, New York Times, on your research.
Yes. If Wikipedia, I mean, if you use Wikipedia as a quote source, I mean, fine, I guess, as long as you have other sources. But to use Wikipedia as a source to debunk something else is asinine and moronic.
At best.
At best. And that's me being nice about it.
Yeah, and it goes on. They shortened the 4 steps to SIFT. Nice little acronym.
I prefer ponderize myself.
Ponderize. The 4 steps are based on the premise that you often make a better decision with less information than you do with more. You know, how many times have you looked at a painting and said, you know, if this artist only used 3 colors, it'd be a lot better than the one that he made with 55 colors.
I don't know. I don't pay that much attention to art. Mostly because most art that I see is,
Garbage.
yes,
Yeah.
it's children scribbling on pages and makes no sense to me.
See.
However,
okay,
some of the old stuff is pretty good. Da Vinci was decent.
Let me put it in. Let me put it into something that you might understand. Pong is a better game than Final Fantasy because it's simpler.
You know,
But there's less information in Pong than there is in Final Fantasy. So therefore it's simpler. And
simpler, yes.
and it's better.
Negative.
Oh. Also, spending 15 minutes to determine a single fact in order to decipher a tweet or a piece of news coming from a source you've never seen before will often leave you more confused than you were before. Unless, of course, you spend 5 minutes like we did on Wikipedia to debunk Wikipedia to know that Wikipedia is not a source for debunking material. It's pretty conclusive.
Generally speaking. Generally speaking.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but
He does say SIFT has its limits. It's designed for casual news consumers, not experts or those attempting to do deep research.
Which should be literally everybody that reads the news.
Yeah, if you want to have an opinion about current events, you should involve yourself with current events.
If you want to have an opinion on current events, you should do deep research. If you don't want to do deep research, then resign yourself to not having an opinion.
Yes.
Because your opinion will inevitably be flawed.
We've been trained to think that Googling or just checking one resource we trust is almost like cheating. Yeah.
Like Cliff Notes?
Or like reading a headline. Or believing that Wikipedia is a source for debunking information. But when people search Google, the best results may not always be first. True. But
usually because Google hides the things that they don't like people knowing about.
But the good information is usually near the top. False, and I will show you.
Magically false.
Often,
meteorically false.
Often you see a pattern in the links of a consensus that's been formed, but deeper into the process, it often gets weirder. It's important to know when to stop.
The place to stop is the truth.
The truth.
That's where you stop.
Truth.
Once you found the truth,
the whole truth
for the truth,
and nothing but the truth. So, gonna pat ourselves on the back a little bit because since we're not the deep critical thinkers,
no,
we just do simple, less than 15-minute research.
I mostly just sit here and make jokes about the research you do.
He's not wrong.
That's my lot in life. I know it's not a lot, but it is my life. So I'm not the talent. I'm the money. I bought my spot.
I bought this seat, and I intend to use this seat as I see fit.
That's right.
Dang it. So this was us back in January 28th of this year, 2021.
Well, it was only like a month ago.
Yeah, it actually was a month ago.
Almost exactly.
Where about a week before this, on a hunch, I looked into some information because I was curious. This is from...
It's always dangerous when Trevor gets curious.
Very dangerous because I usually go on tirades like this that drive me crazy and make people block me on Facebook.
So curious?
Why so curious? This is from Hippocratic Oaths. If you want to follow along and re-listen. So this hunch is founded upon the CDC has said that they can't run their flu models for this flu season because there's no flu stuff that they can track. Interesting, which seems weird that you would suddenly not be able to track a thing you've been tracking since, I don't know, the 20s. Not 2020, and then, 1920. And this thought popped into my head. You should compare a graph of the flu and a graph of the coronavirus.
Kind of weird doing voiceovers on ourselves.
And I thought this would be a daunting task because they haven't really tracked flu cases or anything like that. But I found something. And it was interesting. So, Massachusetts had this graph in the ancient halls of the internet before 2020. So this graph, it shows the percentage of basically hospital visits that were reported that had influenza-esque symptoms. And it goes from October to September because of flu season. Flu season is November to March or whatever. So the graph for this is not January to February. It's October to September. And in this graph, it goes along and it spikes up in January, February, March, and then it goes back down to the rest of the year. And then this next graph is
Hey, look, COVID
Massachusetts daily new cases. The 7-day moving average is what I highlighted for it. And there you can see from March a little spike up because they're getting testing going. And so naturally you're going to find more people as you get more testing available. And then more testing is still available, but it's going down at the end of March, beginning of April. And then it's kind of gone in the summer. And then it starts spiking up in October, November, until we get to where we are today towards the end of January, where it's going down. So then I decided
Critical thinking
there's the
started
first graph,
happening
the
here.
flu, and there's the second graph. As they are, they don't really look similar. They look opposite.
It's the opposite.
And this
of
is the
that.
power of graphs with
My
data.
picture is cutting off part of that graph. Yeah, I've got them.
So I
we
took
can
the
show them
first
better
graph
later.
and put the first part of the graph on the back end. So then it matched the coronavirus cases. And this is what I got. You have, starting in March, cases are up, but it's on a downward trend into the summer, and it starts spiking again in October, November. And then it starts going down towards the end of January, beginning of February.
All right, so critical thinking. You can find headlines now that COVID cases are on a 77% incline since January. Or decline, I mean. Sorry.
I was going to say, they're
Decline.
going up.
77% decline in daily cases since January. I'll pull up their graphs and hopefully they'll show up better. Yes, they show up better on the recording over here. So this is the flu chart. This is the daily new COVID cases chart. This is, again, back January 18th when this was recorded. So there's more. There's another month added onto this. This is the flu, but adjusted so that it fits. Fits the same kind of timeline of March to March. And if we go to current COVID-19 U.S. cases. Ba-da-dum.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-bum. Ba.
They have graphs, right? World meters. Da-da-da.
Look, it's a graph.
Daily new cases in the United States goes up and la la la. Whoa, way up high in January, and then
You're going to switch it to the 7-day moving average like you had on the other one?
yes, there you go.
There you go.
There's your 7-day. Ta-ta-da! And
That is a hard drop.
hard drop, almost like the hard drop you see in the flu cases. And then I said later on in that little segment that don't be surprised to see COVID cases just drop the closer we get to March. And here we are, getting closer to March, and they're just
Tanking. What's the 3-day moving average look like? Oh, about the same.
about the same. Yeah,
Look at that.
look at it. Look at it.
Just a lot more.
A little more wavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I bring this up because Fauci and the Biden administration
Fauci.
today, currently, the Biden administration says that it doesn't know when life will return back to normal. It's not sure when.
Could be next month. Could be next year. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who cares? Some people died. Who cares?
What difference at this point does it make anymore?
Cuomo.
The question of when we get some semblance of normalcy, that timeline also seems to be shifting, a reporter said to Psaki. Dr. Fauci had said a sense of normalcy maybe in the fall. That's when you might be able to go to theaters, go to sporting events, still with masks, of course. Screw you, Fauci. Now it seems that's being slid to early next year. The president said maybe around Christmas. What's going on here? The reporter asked. When do we think we will get back to some taste of normalcy?
About the point when everybody says F you and just goes back to normal.
That's when. Thank you, Mike. That is the correct answer, but they can't say that
is
because then
correct.
everyone will do that. Well, this is the question, as I'm sure is the case for all of you. This is Psaki responding. That every neighbor, every friend, every family member asks at least me in the street when I'm walking my dog in the morning. She's just like everyone else. We want to be straight with the American public. Do you?
I don't think you do. It occurs to me that
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah.
it's so many levels. Because the word she used was straight.
We want to be straight with the American public, though. We are not in a place where we can predict exactly when everybody will feel normal again. No, because you've just fear-mongered them for the last year.
Right.
Because we're at the point now where the government could come out and say, today, no more masks are needed. And you'd have all of these idiots that are wearing 2, 3, 4 masks still going to wear 2, 3, 4 masks, then get mad at everyone that's in public. You're going to make it worse. You're going to make it worse. It's going to spike again.
I don't know about that. I actually think if Fauci and these guys came out and said, you don't need to wear the masks anymore, we're good, we're in the clear,
Yeah.
You would have the opposite of that, where everybody would take the masks off and go, yay, it's finally over because the government said so.
You'll get a large number of sheep that do that, yes. But you'll also now have created a group of mask extremists that will be upset at everything, and they don't understand that they can just not go out to these things if they feel so threatened.
Like, no, look, they told us right here, it's okay.
It's okay. The government said it's safe.
Okay, the government said it's safe for you. It's okay now.
And there are a number of
Stop it. Get some help.
yes. One is, even though we will have enough doses for every person in this country, as you all know, because we've talked about it in here, vaccine hesitancy remains a challenge. Why? Why are people hesitant to receive the vaccine? It can have anything to do with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris saying in the primaries leading up to the election that, no, we're not going to take the vaccine, can't trust the vaccine. Couldn't have anything to do with that.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
We need to ensure that everybody who can get a dose is getting a dose. We will also need to be masking for some time. We'll also need to be still taking social distancing measures. But it's a vaccine.
I was social distancing before it was cool.
Yeah. Now
I hardly ever go talk to people.
Now I don't want to social distance because the government is forcing me to social distance.
I have purposely pushed more gatherings this year than I have the rest of my life combined. Thank you, jackholes. What the hell?
You made all of the introverts extroverts. They've done it. They found the cure.
They found the cure.
So, there is, of course, an understandable question, and I think the president wants things to return to normal, as we all do. But we don't know at this point what that timeline is going to look like, she added. Yeah.
The feeling it's going to be either one, when the American people say no more, or two, when they finally got everything that they want.
Biden suggested that things might be returning to normal by next Christmas. We don't know for certain, but it's highly unlikely that by the beginning of next year's traditional school year in September, we are not significantly better off than we are today. But it matters. It matters. Blah, 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 blah. Continue to wear the mask. It matters. It matters. Just wear the mask. Just wear the mask. So December, I just saw a thing before we started of Fauci face making out with the camera that it'll be 2022 by the time we can maybe start taking off the masks, which raises the question of, is it really a vaccine if it doesn't protect you like a vaccine? And then we have the Wall Street Journal, another conservative bastion of news, right? They have a doctor that says, points out, amid the dire COVID warnings, one crucial fact has been largely ignored. Cases are down 77% over the past 6 weeks. If medication slashed cases by 77%, we call it a miracle pill. Why is the number of cases plummeting much faster than experts predicted? I have a hunch.
I mean, I'm not a math magician or a scientist, but common sense dictates.
In large part, so recently, Fauci and others have been trying their darndest to not say herd immunity because he said that that's not possible to achieve at one point. So now he can't say it anymore because he'll get called out for it like he has been before. So they avoid herd immunity much like Psaki avoids circle back.
Which is terribly awkwardly.
You can see her
in the most obvious way that you possibly can.
She tries so hard to not say that. But the journal points out testing has been capturing only from 10% to 25% of infections. So the number of infections you see apparently is only 10 to 25% of the actual infections. Apparently.
Which would...
I haven't checked Wikipedia to make sure this is true, but apparently... That's... Applying a time-weighted case capture average of 1 in 6.5 to a community of 28 million confirmed cases would mean about 55% of Americans have natural immunity. Not herd immunity, natural immunity. Now people are getting vaccinated. As of this week, 15% of Americans have received the vaccine, and the figure is rising fast because the former president set a goal of 1 million tests, 1 million vaccines a day, and then the current president set a goal to beat that of going to 1 million vaccines a day.
So this is the same.
It's the same. Let's see. Oh, here it is. There is reason to think the country is racing toward an extremely low level of infection, as more people have been infected, most of whom have mild or no symptoms. There are fewer Americans left to be infected. Yeah. At the current trajectory, I expect COVID will be mostly gone by April. So if we go, hold on. Of course I closed it. That would make sense that I would close it.
So you said 10 to 25%?
That's what it says. Only capturing 10 to 25% of infections, the testing. At most, it's capturing 25%, according to this Wall Street article. So gone by April. We go here.
So,
And we go to our handy dandy flu chart from before. Looks like somewhere around April, that starts to kind of really thin out. And if you look at COVID from before, interesting how we have this spike in cases as testing becomes more popular, and then cases just kind of meh in April.
So,
But I'm looking too much into that, sure.
so 10 to 25%, right?
Right.
So if it's 10%, that means that the actual total infected is 284,633,180.
2/3 of the population.
2/3 of the population. If it is the 25%, it's considerably less. But the average of those two numbers, so you do what it would be at 10%, you do what it would be at 25%, add them together, divided by 2.
Right.
Average.
Average
Is 199,243, or 199,243,226, which puts you at roughly 2/3 of the population has already had it on average.
So what you're saying is it's following the natural trend of a normal flu.
Yes.
Huh, interesting. But that's just what the Wall Street Journal is saying, not me.
And that is with all of the social distancing and masks and stuff that they've had us do.
So, speaking of masks. On a hunch.
On a hunch.
I was curious, since I am asthmatic, I notice probably before most other people that while I'm wearing a mask, it gets harder and harder to breathe as the day goes by. And so this is how critical thinking works for all of you New York Times opinion writers and stuff that use Wikipedia for your fact checking.
How dare you?
Let me learn you something about critical thinking. So I'm asthmatic.
Who are you who are so wise in the ways of science? I'm Arthur.
That's probably my favorite one. Who are you who's so wise?
in the ways of science.
I noticed.
You're welcome.
Yes, I noticed that it gets harder to not just breathe, but also when I pull my mask off my face to catch my breath again, almost as if I'm having a little asthma attack, which is super fun as an asthmatic to experience. And then in my mind, I also think about...
Am I having an asthma attack, or am I just short of breath because masks suck?
Yes. For more reasons than one. And then I remember, there's all these stories and stuff of all these people with long-term effects from being infected with COVID. A lot of them being respiratory related. Mm-hmm. I mean, it kind of makes sense because COVID is a respiratory virus, a respiratory disease. But maybe it's just the rabbit hole critical thinker in me that thinks that maybe it's something to do with a face diaper obstructing your airways for hours and hours at a time, for days and days in a row.
Months.
For almost a year.
You know, nobody ever washing them correctly or changing them out when they're supposed to, or, you know, any of the things that would actually make it
But wear a
hygienic.
mask, darn it, or two. Even after you've had it, even after you've been vaccinated. Why can't I breathe?
Well, it's because you took a shitload of fentanyl and somebody's leaning on your neck. Oh. Too soon?
Bad. It was rude, accurate, and uncalled for.
Stop it. Get some help.
Get some help.
All right, before you get too far gone.
You did this to me.
So I just did a simple Google search, and by simple I mean eliminating last year from my search results.
You can do that. You go in and you just edit out 2020.
Yeah, you go to
And search
you go to-
other years.
You go to
different
tools.
places.
See, I'll show you here. So we'll
It's
go
actually quite fun.
to google.com. This is how you properly use Google to search. You don't just start typing here. No. Well, actually, you do, but
Do I still not have a VPN attached on your computer? I need to fix that.
I don't know. But let's type in. Let's type in COVID. Just plain COVID. So that's what you get by just typing things in. You'll get that. Wikipedia probably pops up eventually here at the top. Oh, hey, look,
Almost
sharp
always.
decline, even right there. But if you go to tools, boop, and you go here to anytime, custom range, 2,
Pick an arbitrary date.
12/31/2019. Go. 2006, COVID-19, 2006.
How is there a COVID-19 article from 2006?
That means they've edited this article, so it is not what it used to be
thought the
in
19
2006.
meant that it was from 2019.
Yeah, and then there's this, just because that's part of Google's thing. Oh, look, Wikipedia, coronavirus disease, 2019.
That's from an hour ago. Your search did not work.
Yeah. Feeding
Either that or
America.
Google is feeding you bullshit.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, look at that. Interesting.
Because whenever you search, the things at the top are the most
Yeah.
relevant.
So now let's do something like face mask efficacy study. Before 2019, and you start getting all of these results that actually were from the time that they say they were at. 2015, 2009, 2003, 2017,
I love
2018.
how Google just arbitrarily decides that its filter means nothing to it when you're searching something that's controversial that they don't want you to know.
But trust Google.
But don't go down the rabbit hole.
Don't go to page 2. Stay on page 1. So this article popped up. No good choices. A mask may block out some pollution, but have other ill health effects. All right. Oh,
2017.
because this is what I was looking for. Other ill health effects. I was trying to see if there were any studies at all done on long-term side effects to prolonged mask wearing. If there was any study that was done. What I found was this, and it had an interesting thing that sent me on a rabbit hole that I'm not supposed to go down.
rabbit holes.
So it tells the story of a guy in India wearing a mask, and he basically passes out while wearing the mask while driving, which is wonderful. It's a lot different from reading on my phone.
Isn't it, though?
Where'd it go? I missed you so. Oh, there it is. How good is your mask? Cloth masks are only marginally effective in protecting against harmful pollutants, PM 2.5 pollutants. In a study from the University of Massachusetts Amherst last year, this was done in 2017. Yeah, this is 2017. So 2016 is when this study was done. The University of Massachusetts Amherst last year showed such masks remove only between 15 and 57% of particles emitted from diesel combustion. Well, that made me think, well, how big is diesel combustion particles? And diesel combustion particles are roughly... this is just...
Look!
What the heck was that? You muted yourself too. You're still muted. The accumulation of mode of diesel engine particles is made of submicron particles of diameters typically ranging from 30 to 500 nanometers, with a maximum concentration between some 100 to 200 nanometers. So the most of the particles are between the 100-200 range of nanometers. All right. So then I thought, well, this is COVID related, so I need to know the size of COVID. How big is COVID? COVID is between 50 and 140 nanometers. So your cloth mask that at one point was recommended to use, but now is not. I wonder why. They only remove between 15 and 57% of particles emitted from diesel combustion. So 100, 200, COVID is between 50 and 140. So it's at best 57% effective, but it's most likely not because COVID's on the smaller end of diesel particles. So it's probably like 30% effective at blocking out COVID. Well, then you say that COVID floats in on your little air droplets, right? How big are droplets? Well, they're about this big here. They range in size from... Crud. So much stuff on here. Between 0.5 to 12 nanometers, I believe is what that symbol is, which is right here, 0.1 to 0.2 nanometers. So your droplets pretty much are bigger than diesel emission, which, okay, so it blocks droplets. But this study points out that most droplets evaporate before they hit the ground, and most droplets don't go further than 3 feet away. Unless you sneeze or cough or whatever. And the droplets that would actually be able to float in the air and carry COVID would evaporate before they really got anywhere, if they were able to get through your mask. So that was an interesting little segue.
It's a lovely little rabbit hole.
Lovely little rabbit hole.
Which is what I was looking for this portion.
You make him sick, you will. Behaving like that. There's only one way to eat a brace of conies.
For your rabbit holes. There's only one way to eat a brace of conies.
The study's authors said that wearing cloth masks also provided a false sense of security, allowing the wearer to go out in dense pollution, even though he or she is not adequately protected. I'm going to change just one little word here. The study's authors said that wearing cloth masks also provided a false sense of security, allowing the wearer to go out in dense population, even though he or she is not adequately protected.
I see what you did there.
Meanwhile, masks with filters such as the N95 and N99 masks are also only efficient when worn properly. The N95 or N99 mask varieties, this is a quote from the one of the doctors that did the study, varieties have been traditionally used in hospitals to prevent tuberculosis and other infections during flu season. They can block particulate matter only if you completely prevent air leaks, and that is not possible. Which means that it's technically not an N95 mask at that point.
Which reminds me of a lovely video that I watched recently.
Okay.
I'm sending it to you.
This is because a mask will protect against pollutants only if they fit snugly on a wearer's face, and there are as many facial structures as there are people. Often well-fitting masks are hard to find and uncomfortable to wear. Even beards and facial hair may be obstructions to a good fit and could let in contaminated air, as some brands specify on their packaging. Also, if the mask is too tight, that can also be a problem. You face breathing resistance as air filters through the device, making the wearer work harder to inhale than he would without the mask. This can have several adverse physiological effects when the mask is worn for long periods of time. Moreover, carbon dioxide that is exhaled can get trapped in the chamber of the mask and re-enter the body each time the mask user inhales. This delivers less oxygen to the body than when the person is not wearing a mask. It can lead to oxygen shortage, suffocation, respiration trouble, and heart attacks, said Dr. Shah, scientist and additional director at the Central Pollution Control Board. He also pointed out it's a potential source for bacteria and viruses. The moisture that's stuck in the mask and the temperature is ideal for viruses and bacteria to thrive. This could result in the growth of microbes on the mask and aid in the spread of airborne diseases like influenza. Interesting. That was the first thing I stumbled across.
I cannot find that video. Interesting. So there's a video of a guy standing outside, and he's breathing, and it's cold, and so you see, he
puts on the mask.
And he puts on the mask, and it's...
Yeah.
And then he puts on another mask, and it's still everywhere.
Yeah.
I cannot find that video anymore.
I believe it was a TikTok video.
Was it a TikTok?
Yeah. I know which one you're talking about, yes. And then I found another one. Adverse effects of prolonged mask use among healthcare professionals during COVID-19. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's a study. This was March 2020. Let's see. When was this done? Were you done? Oh, it was a study done last year. But they did a study to see the adverse effects on prolonged wearing of masks. A total of 343 healthcare professionals on the COVID-19 front lines participated in this study. The majority were female, and 227 were located in New York City. 225 respondents identified as white. Blah, 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 blah. 314 respondents, so 343 participated. 314 respondents reported adverse effects from prolonged mask use, with headaches being the most common complaint. Skin breakdown was experienced by 175 respondents, and acne was reported in 182 respondents. Impaired cognition was reported in 81 respondents. there was a previous history of these in some of the respondents, and some respondents experienced resolved side effects once masks were removed, while others required physical or medical intervention.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, this is healthcare professionals that were in this study. Yeah. Prolonged use of N95 and surgical masks by healthcare professionals during COVID-19 has caused adverse effects such as headaches, rash, acne, skin breakdown, and impaired cognition in the majority of those surveyed. That's exactly what you want from your medical professionals is impaired cognition. Further on in this study, I believe it's this one. It's either in this one or the last one. It points out that I think it's the other one. Oh, one of these studies, it points out that they tested people's oxygen levels and all that before they put on a mask, then had them wear a mask and do various activities and blah, 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 while testing their oxygen levels throughout and then afterwards. And they found that it was that study. They found that people did not regain their oxygen levels even after the mask was off. Oxygen levels went down, and their the strength of their breath was down. And they report that they weren't able to see when that actually bounces back because they had to let people leave so they could eat and go back to their normal lives in the hours that they spent there doing the study.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. We're probably going to be fine.
Probably.
I found this gem here. This little gem. Filtration performance of FDA cleared surgical masks. It basically goes over how well masks do the size of particles that they can block, which is, believe it or not very small. Surgical masks don't really block small particulates very well. But it also, what I found most interesting from this is it goes over how these masks are certified, because the FDA has to certify these masks for surgical use and N95 and blah, blah, blah. The way that it's certified is the manufacturer sends a report to the FDA of this is how well the mask is performing. And the FDA says, okay, send it. The FDA doesn't actually go in and inspect
anything
or test the masks. They just rely on the reports from the manufacturers.
Gotta love
that
that.
The masks are performing as stated. And when they test it, the testing process is the mask is completely sealed around the thing that they're testing to see how the air moves through the mask.
Because that's helpful.
Because that's exactly how they're worn on regular people. But, what do I know? I'm just thinking too hard about this. Was back in 2009. And then another study about how cloth masks can increase the risk of respiratory illness and viral infections because they can. And this one was really fun because when should you change your surgical mask? At least every day. At least when I go to work, they have a nice little sign, 1 per day for the surgical mask that you can take. this points out that doctors are instructed to change their mask every 20 minutes to an hour. Because as soon as the mask gets damp, it is no longer effective. The CDC is very clear. When a surgical mask is used, it should be changed between patients or during patient treatment if it becomes wet. The Organization for Safety, Asbestos, and Prevention reminds us that masks do not filter efficiently. In fact, a wet mask... that masks do not filter efficiently. In fact, a wet mask becomes a great wick that draws in moisture and debris. You might be surprised to learn that changing the mask every 20 minutes in a wet environment and every 60 minutes in non-aerosol environment and between patients is recommended. They provided a link to it, of course, because this is for dentists mainly that use this, I believe. They provided a link to their CDC thing, mask respirators. So we go here and wait,
Oops. This no longer exists.
it doesn't exist. Well, I mean, this was done in 2010. So what happened? Well, if you take this link and plug it into ye old Wayback Machine, this is what you find. What you should know about using face mask respirators during a flu pandemic, because the swine flu or whatever was going on at the time. Wash your hands often with soap and water. Use alcohol-based hand cleaner if soap and water is not available. Cover your mouth and nose. Stay away from other people. If you are ill, avoid crowded places, large gatherings if possible. For your mask, you are sick with the flu, so wear a mask if you are sick and you think you might have close contact with other people. Yeah, not anymore. You live with someone who has the flu and you need to be in a crowded place. Limit the amount of time you spend in these crowded places and wear a face mask while you are there. Wear a face mask if you are well and do not expect to be in close contact with a sick person, but need to be in a crowded place. Limit the amount of time you spend, blah, blah, blah. And then they go in and explain of changing the mask because it can't be wet and all that stuff. And they also point out like surgical masks, N95 respirators should be worn only once and then thrown away in the trash. Don't reuse it. Do not ever reuse it. If you have a heart or lung disease or other health condition, you may have trouble breathing through respirators, and you should talk with your doctor before using a respirator. Yeah. Oh, here we go. So on the face masks help stop droplets from being spread by the person wearing them. They also keep splashes or sprays from reaching the mouth and nose of the person wearing the face mask. They are not designed to protect you against breathing in very small particles.
Huh. Well,
they also point out in here that as more information comes along, they'll update it, and there hasn't been a whole lot of actual studies done on this yet to see adverse effects and blah, blah, blah. They say they update it as time goes along, but today it's just gone.
And from what I can tell, it was removed
A couple of years ago, I think. 3 years ago? 5 years ago?
It's looking like 2012, actually.
Yeah. Which I believe is about the same time some of these studies came out reinforcing that. Strangely enough. The last thing I got. Oh, yeah. Last one I got. This also stresses that if you wear a mask for too long, bacteria is going to grow on it, and you'll get sick. Source of bacterial contamination in surgical masks was the body surface of the surgeons rather than the OR environment. So they placed a mask. They measured bacteria on masks being worn versus masks just sitting in the OR. Moreover, we recommend that surgeons should change the mask after each operation, especially those beyond 2 hours. Double-layered surgical masks or those with excellent filtration functions may also be a better alternative. So they are, this study provides strong evidence for the identification that surgical masks as source of bacterial contamination during operative procedures, which should be a cause for alarm and attention in the prevention of surgical site infection in clinical practice. So they were concerned that surgical masks would cause infections in people that were being operated on, as well as the people wearing the mask. But, just follow the science. Just follow the science.
Just follow the science.
And if you want to, all you Wikipedia fact checkers out there, if you're going to dispute the science that I just showed you because the science is evolving, then that means that the science is never settled.
Because I only believe in science.
Yeah. So shove it.
You know what?
Who are you? Who are so wise in the ways of science? I am Arthur.
I don't rely on Wikipedia. That's how I'm so wise.
I am Arthur.
Yeah. And this was all done. I've probably spent 2 hours total finding all this. Probably. And this is just the ones I decided to include, not all of the ones I actually found.
Things you actually found.
So, yeah, look forward to that.
I mean, in the guise of 2 or 3 sources.
But again, I did not have Wikipedia in my thing, so take it with a grain of salt. Wikipedia was not one of my sources.
Wikipedia was not one of the sources, so obviously everything you presented is false.
At best.
Because Wikipedia is the end-all, be-all source that we need to fact-check
The arbiter of information.
ourselves against, because only they actually tell you the whole story.
Unbiased, unfiltered. The whole story.
No, you look like an idiot.
Thank you, tree people. Thank you. Freaking heck.
Wow, what a week.
I'm probably more annoyed because someone that I'm almost certain doesn't listen to this, and if they do, hi. Because things will come up on the socials, and when I decide to comment on them, I only do so when I know I have information that supports and corroborates my claim, so I can then share said information to make myself a reliable source for information.
I just like stirring shit. and
There's that.
Poking.
There's a bit of that mixed in with it, yes. A heavy dose at times. But it gets frustrating when you do stuff like this, not because I get paid to do it, not because I necessarily love to do it. I love to do things that are not reading boring studies from 10 years ago.
Is valid. It's enjoyable to do things that don't involve studies from 10 years ago.
It is. It has its perks. But then when someone questions you on it and you share the information that shows what it is, especially when it's information from sources that they have been sharing with you, and then they don't read that source, it gets a little infuriating, and then it makes me research more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. But yeah, don't think for yourself. Just trust the experts that trust the science, because that's the right thing to do, apparently. Or, think for yourself, make your own choices, and be a free person. Because that's the fun thing to do.
Pretty much.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
That's it?
That's it.
Well, it's been a long week.
A long week. And because of that, it's 2 hour and a half.
2 hour and a half episodes. Like to leave something at the end. I just don't know what.
You feel like something needs shared, but you're not sure what needs shared.
Yes, that's basically what it is. I mean, my thing this week was the politics. Your thing this week was the COVID, so...
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Perfectly balanced as all things should be. You're frustrated about the virus. I've given up on it. I just don't care anymore.
So now you're focusing on politics where nobody cares.
Pretty much.
Even those making the laws don't care.
I don't know. The COVID is just a tool they're using to bludgeon us to death with everything that they want to get done.
Oh, all right. I got a point. I got a point here.
Okay.
I'll leave you with a point. Wife and I went to a restaurant. We celebrated Valentine's a week later because we didn't want to deal with Valentine crowds. So we went the next week. We go to a restaurant. They have 0 signs on their door about wearing a mask or anything like that. They do have a stay 6 feet apart sign. Mm-hmm. I think, cool. I waltz in there without my mask. I have never seen a person run so fast from the back of the kitchen to my wife and I at the door. Do you have a mask? Me? Yeah, do you have a mask? Like, petrified, asking me if I have a mask. I slowly pull one out of my pocket. Yes. And then she starts walking away.
Yeah.
I put it on just so I wouldn't have to deal with it for the next minute before I sat down, where I am free to remove the mask. But in the COVID relief thing, they're really pushing this $15 minimum wage thing that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Restaurants, the sit-down ones, generally need to turn each table about 3 times a night to make a profit. Generally. Now, if they are only able to have half of those, that means they need to turn each of their tables 6 times a night to generate a profit. And it's already a struggle to turn them over 3 times a night. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to force these restaurants to pay the waiters and waitresses $15 an hour instead of the 2 whatever, 3 whatever they get paid plus tips. If these employees don't smart up to what's going on, you're not going to have a job anymore. There's not going to be that restaurant anymore. There's not going to be that grocery store anymore. The more you act like a person,
the more you act like a person. What happened?
My camera froze.
Oh. It's probably not recording anymore.
No, it's recording.
Oh.
Yeah, it's capturing you moving back around. I'm stuck in some goofy stance.
Well, that's awkward.
But yeah, the more you just stand by and get anal about a person walking in without a mask, the closer you get to getting your $15 minimum wage, which is closer to not having a job, which means you have $0 wage. But it's okay because eventually the government will send you $600.
Eventually you'll get universal basic income.
Yeah.
Which will just do wonders.
Men are free to think for themselves, so do so. It'll be a lot better for everyone.
Do you want inflation? This is how you get inflation.
This is how you get inflation. Force the market to move in a place where it's not prepared to be, and it will crash.
Where the hell do they think all the money's coming from?
The government.
Okay, where does that money come from?
The government tree.
But where does that money come from?
The Fed.
Where does that money come from?
The printing press.
Right. Okay. So, the printing press. You know what happens when the government prints a lot of money and doesn't take any out of circulation?
Iran gets nuclear weapons.
Well, yes, but also... Also...
Didn't see that coming, did you?
I didn't. I mean, you're not wrong. But still... I mean, correlation is not necessarily causation, my friend. Those two things might not exactly tie together.
Well, I tried.
But you print a bunch of money and don't take any out of circulation, you have a decrease in the value of the money.
Yes.
Which means that your $15 an hour is now worth less than the $10 an hour you were getting paid before.
What?
Yeah, that's how that works. Also, the monetary value of money is dependent upon the market that it is used in.
Uh-huh.
So, in essence, if you increase everyone's wage, what's inevitably going to happen is that the market will adjust until everything was almost exactly the way it was before, and your new $15 an hour will not be any better than the 7 whatever it was. It's market balance. It's how money works.
So what you're saying is if everyone is forced to get a bachelor's degree,
bachelor's degrees become worthless.
Bachelor's degree is worthless.
Yes, exactly. That is what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Value of things are dependent upon the rarity of things. So the more things that you have that are all the same among people, the less valuable they are.
Fidget spinners were a hot commodity until everyone had fidget spinners.
Yes, exactly. So this applies to pretty much everything in economics. There's this little trick. It's called supply and demand.
Oh,
yeah. That's how economics
is that
work.
the graph?
And it
that
doesn't.
Goes like
it doesn't
this,
matter
like
if you're in a socialist economy, a capitalist economy. The idea of supply and demand is a monetary idea.
Right.
So it's anything of value being traded has to have the rule of supply and demand applied to it. The more supply you have, the less valuable the resource is. The less supply you have, the more demand you have, the more valuable the resource is, regardless of whether it's money, trade, labor, whatever.
So when there's a natural disaster and the fuel and the gas stations can't get refilled, gas prices go up because there's no
fuel
supply.
Yes, exactly.
So what you're saying is if there's a brand new 8K TV, it's super expensive because there's a lot of them.
No, it's super expensive because people don't want it as much because there's not as much of it, so they jack the price up.
But then once a lot of people
once a lot of people buy it, a lot of people want it, and there's a lot more of it, then the price goes down.
Oh.
Yes. So the same thing applies to money.
Uh-huh.
So the more money that is pumped into a market, the less valuable the money is. Which then makes your living wage less valuable. Which then means that the cost of living has gone up. Which then means you have to raise the minimum wage to keep it a living wage. Which then continues the vicious cycle. So when you do what's been proposed, which is to make a law that states that the minimum wage has to be a certain set thing in correlation to inflation, you've essentially created an indefinite loop that will eventually destroy your monetary system. Because it will eventually drive your money into the ground. Because it'll be worth nothing.
But there's no real world examples of anything like that occurring.
Oh, you mean like several pieces of even U.S. currency that are worth less than the metal that they're printed on? That's not a real life thing. That's, oh, wait.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. You mean like Venezuelan currency that is literally worth less than the paper that it's printed on?
It's worth more as toilet paper.
It is worth more as toilet paper than it is as actual money. You can literally find their money in the street
if I remember
because
right,
it is so completely worthless that it just lies around on the ground.
If I remember right, there's a story of a lady that went to the market to buy bread in Venezuela. She had a wheelbarrow full of cash to go buy bread. She walked out without the wheelbarrow and a loaf of bread.
Yeah. And it's a simple concept that the people that propose these ideas don't understand. You're not helping.
Yeah.
You are hurting the market.
Venezuela's solution was, hey, our dollar is worth a penny now. Well, what if we just slap 2 zeros on the end of it? Now it's worth 100, which makes it worth $1. Except now they've made it so now it's worth less than a penny. That's what happened.
And this applies to it's a natural occurrence among trades with people. Everybody has a cost benefit in their head. Different things are worth different things to them. Your time is worth so much to you. Sell your time for what you think it's worth, not what somebody else thinks it's worth. If you go get a job at $7.25 an hour, you are agreeing that your time is worth $7.25 an hour.
Yep.
If you go get a job at $10 an hour, you are agreeing that your time is worth $10 an hour, so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. If you go trade something you own to somebody else for something they own, you are agreeing that what you are trading them is worth the same amount.
Whether it's money or physical.
Whether it's money or physical or whatever. It's a law, a natural law of trade. You have to find value in the things. When there is no value in something, it becomes useless.
And you can see this in the laws of nature with inflation. If the deer population gets too high, the vegetation population goes down, and deer starve and die.
But it is immoral to hunt them.
Yeah, but it's immoral to hunt them, and we can't reintroduce the wolf because it hasn't been there for a century, so it's probably not a good idea to put the wolf there.
Actually, it's a terrible idea to put the wolf there. Wolves are incredibly invasive and really, really mean.
Except for in the cases of every time where they've reintroduced species that have been gone to help control populations, both species thrive in those areas, as well as the vegetation.
Yeah, don't say something like that to Idaho farmers. Because they reintroduced wolves there and livestock started disappearing.
So that's livestock. That's not nature.
That's different.
Yeah. That's different. Or like the Eskimos that are telling people to, the Inuits or whatever up in Alaska, telling people to stop caring about the polar bears because the polar bears are destroying their lives up there. Because the population of polar bears is actually really high. And it's at dangerous levels high because if there's too many predators, then the prey starts to dwindle, and then the predators dwindle, and
it boils down to fine balance.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Exactly.
We circled back.
You know, you can you can have the best intentions and cause the worst harm because you're overcorrecting in a direction that you shouldn't go.
Yes.
You know, yeah, like with the polar bears, things like that. As we meddle in these different areas of nature, we end up causing harm in a lot of ways because we don't understand where the balance is.
Yes.
You have to not only protect the wildlife, you have to regulate the wildlife. They have to be kept at certain levels. They have to be kept in certain areas. But how do you know? How do you know where the right level is?
Right.
It's the level where everything maintains balance and everything thrives. It's the same in all the things that we do. It's the same in our markets. It's the same in our governance. You have to find the balance. There should be law. People that advocate anarchy and things like that, they don't understand natural order either.
No.
Because there always has to be some form of law. And if there's a law, there has to be people to enforce it.
Yep.
And if there's people to enforce it, there has to be somebody to regulate them. There's steps and processes to everything. But it's finding that balance, striking that balance in all these things that is difficult and that is so misunderstood. You know, we talk about economics and these different things and different policies. The reason that we hate a lot of policies is because they are overbearing, overburdening policies. Minimum wage is overbearing, it's overburdening.
It disrupts balance.
It disrupts balance, and it disrupts it in unfair ways. The minimum wage in California should have nothing to do with the minimum wage in Idaho.
No.
The minimum wage in Idaho should have no bearing on the minimum wage in New York.
Yeah.
The places are completely different. And to put a blanket thing down that says everybody's got to do this is not only asinine, it's dangerous. And it's detrimental to the people, it's detrimental to our markets, it's detrimental to our way of life, and arguably, it is not the prerogative of the government. At very least, not the prerogative of the federal government.
Right.
And this is the fight that we're fighting. I'm not fighting to say that there shouldn't be a government, that we should just all live in our own little bubbles doing our own little things. No, I am fighting for the rule of justice, the rule of law, the rule of mercy, and the freedom to act according to my own desires. And that freedom, those ideals, can only be protected by a well-balanced, well-instituted government. But it cannot be dictated or given by a government.
Yeah.
And it's an important distinction to make, I feel.
Very important.
Anyway.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end it.
I think it is. I think it's time. It's time to say goodbye for now. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for, I say watching, but everything's been not cooperating with uploading videos.
Yes, the videos are not cooperating right now.
I'm trying to fix it.
We'll get it eventually.
We'll get there. But yeah, like, subscribe, share, please. And thank you.
Follow, listen, rate, do all the things.
All the things.
And definitely, when you see us, let us know how much you're enjoying it. I've had several friends that outside of social media and everything else in person have told me that how much they enjoy the show, and I appreciate the reach out And we love every one of you guys. We hope you get something out of these episodes because you're the reason we're doing this.
Yes.
Because it certainly isn't to line my wallet.
But if you share, it helps.
But
it helps us
eventually, someday, maybe if enough people share things, I could recoup some of the loss that I've taken.
There's got to be at least 10 more of you out there somewhere.
Somewhere. Not that we're in it for the money, but the money certainly makes it hurt less.
Makes it hurt less, and it makes it easier to justify spending more time on it.
Yes.
To give you better content and blah, blah, blah.
And putting in the effort to come up with some other things, some new stuff to, make it a little funner. Hopefully we end up getting to a place where we can do some more stuff, some cooler things down the road.
Yes.
But anyway, like we said, like, subscribe, comment, share, do all the fun things, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. All right, here we go again.
Here we go again on our own. Gotta hit record. There we go.
Helps if you hit the record button.
I have a lot of windows open. 1 window, 2 window, 3, 4 windows. Some of them overlapping others. Yeah, I'm ready.
How do you get multiple windows on your computer? It only allowed me to install one operating system.
It's called Windows because you can have Windows open. Yeah.
Ha.